Welcome to Module 7, Part 5. In this part, I will overview the last of the diacritics you will be expected to use or know, as well as some non-English IPA symbols that are useful in the transcription of disordered or foreign accented speech. First is the diacritic for lateralization of a phoneme. Normally, the s and z phonemes are produced with the sides of the tongue raised, so that the air flows through a groove made by the tongue, directing the airflow toward the upper incisors. In a lateral lisp, however, the sides of the tongue are somewhat lowered during production of the s and z, so that noisy airflow is directed around the sides of the tongue. The phonemes are thus described as being lateralized in this context. Lateralization is transcribed by adding a small superscript letter L above and to the right of the phoneme symbol. While not phonemes in English, these lateralized fricatives are actually phonemes in some languages, so you may also transcribe them using their IPA symbols rather than the diacritic. You use an L with a small loop in the middle for the voiceless version, and a joined L and J for the voiced version. Here are some examples. Listen. Si versus he, and zoo versus you. Additional symbols from the IPA that may be useful in transcription of the speech of children with phonological disorders or non-native English speakers include the alveolar affricates, fronted versions of the palatal affricates. These affricates are reflected in words borrowed from Russian and Japanese, like tsar and tsunami. The voiceless version is a joined T and S, and the voiced version is a joined D and Z. Listen, tsunami. The largest group of non-native English speakers in the U.S. is people whose first language is Spanish. So you are likely to encounter the palatal nasal ñ in transcription of Spanish accented English. This sound is found in the name of the language, Español. Its symbol is an N with a small left curving tail on the left side of the bottom of the symbol. Spanish, at least some dialects, and German also have voiced and voiceless labial fricatives. I have found both of these useful in transcription of Spanish accented English when a target f or v sound seems weakly articulated. Listen, vest versus vest, or fees versus fees. The voiced version of the bilabial fricative is transcribed as an uppercase B with an extra tail on the bottom left, and the voiceless version is transcribed as a Greek letter phi. It's a circle with a vertical line through it, usually with a horizontal foot on top and bottom. Lastly, you might want to use the labiodental nasal symbol. It's difficult to identify when you can't see the speaker's lips, but it's the allophone of N that you probably make when you say the word inform. Try saying it and feel the position of your articulators when you say the N sound. Try it. Inform. The labiodental nasal is transcribed as an M with a small left curving tail on the bottom right of the symbol. Finally are some diacritics that I've found to be very useful in transcribing accented or disordered speech. The first is a diacritic indicating that a phoneme is briefer than normal. For example, some second language learners learn the tense-lax distinction as mainly a length difference. Therefore, they may produce E and I very similarly, except for duration. For example, listen. Sheep versus ship. But maybe in a non-native English speaker, the difference might be more like this. Sheep versus sheep. In this case, the extra brief diacritic would be useful in describing the fact that the speaker is making a difference between the two target sounds, but it is not a difference that will be easily understood by listeners. The brief symbol is a small curved line placed above the phoneme symbol. Next, a weak version of a phoneme might include some of the versions that we heard produced by the child with the cleft palate. In this case, the consonant may be weakly released or have weak frication because if the velum is not raised, the child cannot sufficiently increase air pressure in the oral cavity. You might also hear a weak version of a phoneme produced by a non-native English speaker. I'll try to make a normal versus a weak version of the p sound. Listen. Pay versus pay. A weak version of a phoneme is transcribed using a small corner below the symbol. Instead of a weak version of a phoneme, sometimes a speaker will produce an extra strong version of a phoneme. The extra strong diacritic is a small turned equal sign below the symbol. I'll try to make an example of a normal p sound followed by a strong one. Listen. Pay versus pay. Finally, in disordered speech, you may sometimes hear a whistled version of S. The whistled version of S is transcribed with a small upward pointing arrow below the symbol. You should now be able to complete the remainder of the end of chapter review exercises and any remaining in chapter exercises. This is the end of Part 5.